listeners. Welcome to the next session.
It's an advice podcast for game masters who are seeking help with planning their next session. I'm Adam Johns.
And I'm Alyssa Johns. Hey, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm tired.
Yeah, and it's pretty smoky. There's lots of wildfires going. The world is burning.
Very literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been tough in Washington. There's a lot of particles in the air.
Yeah, and we don't have AC, so it's dry and hot.
I feel like we don't really have a right to complain about the heat and the particles when people are losing their homes. Though.
That's true.
That's really tragic.
I do feel very lucky and fortunate. And it is really eerie seeing the pictures, especially close to the wildfires. There's pictures coming out of San Francisco right now.
Oh, man, I've seen them. And people are comparing it to Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, it's the apocalypse. It's crazy. 2020 sucks.
If there's an apocalypse, do we get to is it going to be more like the Mad Max kind of apocalypse?
Oh man.
Or is it going to be more like zombie apocalypse?
I don't know which one I would survive better in. I'm feeling like I'm going to be an automatic goner.
I have some discomfort with the sort of style of clothing in a Mad Max apocalypse, and I'm wondering whether or not I have to follow by like a similar clothing standard.
Are you saying that you need to get in shape for the apocalypse?
Yeah, because I just feel like I can't pull off like an X harness across my bare naked chest in the way that I would want to.
I mean,
you know, like a leathery, like a bandolier, like a double bandolier across my chest.
You just gotta own it. There's all sorts of body shapes in the apocalypse.
You think the apocalypse is pretty body shape friendly?
Yeah, you just gotta accentuate those things that you want people to draw attention to. So if you want an X somewhere, maybe not necessarily on your problem spots, put it. But you have a nice butt. Put it on your butt. So
what you're saying is I should wear a double X bandolier. I should wear one on top and one on bottom.
Yes.
to really pull it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I now have my apocalypse out.
Okay. Next opportunity to cosplay. I want to see it. And you know what? The fans do too.
I'm sure they do.
So we usually like to start with our first segment, which is the meat and potatoes of the podcast, which is called Next Session Help. So do you want to get into it?
Sure. Am I the potatoes? Yeah, let's jump into it.
All right. Well, it depends on where the double X is.
Yeah.
Is it on the meat or the potatoes? Heyo. This question comes from Meko Mask or Miko Mask?
Miko Mask.
Miko Mask. Miko Mask asks, any advice for making a magical tome of songs more interesting?
Okay.
I mean, you got me in the first part.
Yeah.
In one of my campaigns, a player started with a family heirloom, a small blue book known as the Tome of Symphony, with some sheets of music within that are impossible to play on traditional instruments. I plan to have it tied to some of the more major plot elements later down the road, but for right now, I need ways to describe exactly how the book and the tunes within defy understanding. The best I can come up with is that the instruments used to play the songs are unique and impossible to replicate, and that the music itself needs to be translated to a playable format. Additionally, how could I have the book become a boon to the party later down the road?
Defy understanding.
Like you're looking at this book, and you might even be a bard.
You're versed in music.
And you cannot understand this book.
Okay. So this is tough for me. You know this, but the audience doesn't necessarily know this. But I actually play quite a bit of music. I take piano lessons, and I play piano and drums and a little bit of guitar and saxophone. I played saxophone for a long, long time. And the tough part about this is music is literally, it's almost mathematics, which means that it's hard to write music that is actually impossible. There might be music that you could write that, like, say, one person couldn't play because it requires a whole band, or that defies the range of the instruments that you're playing, right? You're playing a bass trombone, and this goes way, way up high into high octaves, and that might be impossible to play on a bass trombone. But there's actually not, like, a lot of stuff that is in and of itself impossible to create a sound of. It is just hard to make a sound of. Yeah, so if you wanted to make something that was literally impossible, you have to get really creative with it.
Yeah, but this is fantasy magic in a fantasy world.
So
fantasy magical music.
So fantasy magical music. So there's one easy go-to here, which is if you want it to defy understanding, then I would say that the music doesn't make sense. Like it comes out as a cacophony of sound instead of actual music until it is translated magically.
Right.
Basically, like it's a code, right? It is needs to be deciphered before it can be used. And the bard who's reading it, to anybody who doesn't know music, they would look at it and be like, I guess it's a music sheet. But the bard who reads it goes, this doesn't make any sense. This is all over the place. This is chords that don't connect well together and a melody that has no melody to it and rhythms that are not well suited. This isn't a song. This is literally like somebody recorded a bunch of random sounds.
Yeah. I like that they say impossible to play on traditional instruments, as if there are more unique instruments maybe from the past that don't exist today that they would have to find.
Sure. Yeah, I suppose that's a possibility. Although again, that's sort of hard to describe, right? A middle C note is the same middle C note as it is for all instruments.
But not in magical fantasy realm.
Sure.
You're
I
trying to go
so.
very logical with this, and I'm trying to go very fantasy with this.
I am trying to go very logical.
You're coming from, I'm a musician, it's always the same, and I'm coming from, yeah, but it's a tome of songs that are played on the flugelhorn.
So the challenge that I have with that is it's musical notes are a language.
So this is a different language.
And you could have it be a different language, but then it's just a different language. It still has to have sort of a set of rules to help describe the way that it works. You're right. You could totally have it be, a different language or a different set of stuff. But then it's about translating it more than it is about, like, it's impossible to play.
Right, exactly. And that kind of seems like where they're coming from here.
It seems like the
music itself needs to be translated to a playable format.
So I could see that in that case. I like the idea that it still looks like music. That the like notes and notations all look like musical notes and notations to show that it is music. But somebody who really understands music would look at it and say this is a mess and it's not a real song and it's clearly not what this is supposed to sound like.
Right.
Because that really lends to the idea that the bard has to be very useful here. The bard is the one who understands what's going on. Okay. I assume there's a bard. Did they actually say there's a bard?
They did.
Okay.
So my first thought to make this kind of unique would be that this is the Tome of Symphony from a creature that has multiple heads.
Okay.
So
they're
this
singing
is
like harmonies.
Yeah, harmonies, or maybe they can play multiple instruments at the same time, but since maybe they share a brain or maybe they can communicate with each other, it's a very specific creature.
Okay. That's an interesting idea. You could have it could be a creature with multiple heads, or it could be like a giant bagpipe creature. That has like little spouts coming off of it, and it sort of puffs up with air and then squeezes itself down and plays the bagpipe.
He's full of hot air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could have a harmonica that he adds in that he plays
holds
from his mouth.
So
bagpipe creature.
the other thing Miko Mask asked was, additionally, how could I have the book become a boon to the party later down the road?
Ooh, actually, let me toss out one additional thing.
Okay.
Before we go into the boon, what if the notes or the notation? So in music, oftentimes it'll say like very quietly or very loud or with feeling or stuff like that.
Right.
What
and
if the
tempo.
What if the notations are like sort of impossible to figure out pieces? Like instead of like with feeling, they say like confused or in denial. like the notations are specific feelings or states that are incredibly hard to figure out how you're supposed to replicate that. Which would also lead to the idea that like maybe the music itself evokes specific feelings from the people who listen to it, which could kind of get into this idea of like what boons or what benefits does it provide for the party.
Totally. Yeah, I was thinking that once they translate maybe even a piece of the song, or other, a piece of the symphony, then it creates a plus one or a party benefit that when they hum it or something happens.
Ooh, okay, I've got an extra idea. What if some of the sounds of the song are not instruments at all, but are in fact just very hard to capture sounds in like environment? Like
Oh,
this
like
says a
nature.
lion's roar,
Oh,
or butterfly wings
but you
flapping.
would have to time it right.
Right, it would be impossible. Like
Right.
how would you even get a lion to roar at the right tempo that you needed to roar?
Well, then it could be a quest where they are trying to bottle sounds.
Yeah, that could be kind of interesting.
That then instead of playing, you know, instruments, they have all these bottles of different sounds that they're opening and closing at the right time.
Yeah, that's super interesting. That could be kind of a fun way to do it as well. Plus, you could then make some very very specific sounds. Like you could say like sound of someone hitting their thumb with a hammer.
Oh, yeah, dragon's toenails scraping along the ground.
Right, scraping along sand
Ooh,
specifically. You have like a bunch of really oddball sounds that are like, this is so incredibly specific. Why do I need somebody named Ted singing a high C note while underwater? Why does it have to be named Ted? This is like how specific this music can get.
a particular book that has to close, slam shut from page 220.
Yeah, it tells you exactly the book and
It has to
exactly
be
the
open to those
pages.
pages and you have to shut it at the
That's
right
really
time.
fun. I like that idea. Plus, then that would give you this idea that it feels like a spell
Yeah. Oh, totally.
because you've got all these sort of random components to put in together to turn it into a spell, which I think could be very interesting. Okay, so back to the other part that you were talking about. A boon for the party, right?
Yeah, boon for the party. What would a boon be?
So this gets into the idea of you want to give a magical item to your players and you want to make it up and you want it to be beneficial to them.
Well, and they're making them work for it, that's for sure.
There's always an interesting question here of how powerful do I make my magic item such that the players think that it's interesting, they like the idea, but also it is not going to break the game after this campaign is over that they now have this powerful book. I have a few suggestions to that end. One is that the solving of this book could address a bigger problem. There's a giant monster that's coming, and the monster is invulnerable to all damage. But if you can figure out how to get this book to play this song, then you can make the monster vulnerable again. So now the power of the book isn't necessarily in specifically the buff that it gives you, but the fact that it allows you to do something that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. That's one direction to go. Another direction is that you can take some hints from some of the magic items that are pulled from like the Dungeon Master's Guide, and things like that, and hobble together. What looks interesting to you for some of the magical effects, and that is also it's great for new game masters to use that technique because it allows you to balance a little bit more easily. So you don't fall into any pitfalls where you say, cool, I'm going to give my players the ability to I guess transform themselves into any creature that they want to turn into, and then that turns into being very very powerful, and you didn't answer the questions of like, oh, does creature include dragons, does that include the
Right.
Tarrasque, can they just turn into whatever they want, and you're like, oh no, now I I've created a sort of difficult situation for myself.
Well, if you find yourself in that situation, you could have the Tome of Symphony be used up.
That's true.
Like as you play the song, it erases from the book.
Which could be kind of a fun way to do it. Then you could make the Tome of Symphony very powerful, but it's really only one use, which could be very interesting. And that then it becomes a plot point.
Right.
Now maybe they use it to one shot defeat the big bad guy that you have in your campaign, but they're gonna do it as a major plot point for what's going on. In that case, maybe the Tome of Symphony brings you back to life, or creates a save state for all the players that they can return back to.
Oh my gosh.
You can only play the song twice. You play it once, and when you play it once, it it creates a save state at that point. And then if you play it again or you play the refrain again, then it returns you back to that save state. Save state. Save state, and it erases the song.
So it's a floating save point.
Yeah. I think the whole concept of like this tome is very interesting. It could also have like, it's called the Tome of Symphony, but maybe it has multiple songs. Maybe it's just more than one song, which then could lead you to the idea of like you can give a bunch of like maybe situational buffs or interesting effects that are powerful in the right situation, but not necessarily powerful all the time.
Yeah, I like the idea of it's so hard to translate this symphony that they only learn bits and pieces. And those bits and pieces give them little buffs. And oh man, I wish we could learn the whole thing because clearly it would make us very powerful. But if they do, that's when it gets used up.
This actually might be interesting in a group where you didn't have a bard, where the players slowly gain bardic powers.
Ooh.
As they translate the book, and then it basically gives them access to little bardic abilities that you're granting to each individual player, or something along those lines. There's some bardic spells that you're granting to players that they can now use.
Yeah, I like that. Well, thank you, Miko Mask. I think that is a fantastic idea, and I might steal it. Thanks.
Yeah, I like the name too. I think Miko Mask did a good job with Tome of Symphony. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Good on ya.
Good on you, Miko Mask.
Okay, I think we have time for our second next session help question before our break. So
let's do it.
It's a little longer. This is from Game Guy _.
Oh, Game Guy _. Yeah, of course.
How to deal with the consequences of splitting the party.
Oh, man.
I'm a relatively new DM, and I could use some advice on how to handle a problematic twist that two of my party have created. So Game Guy included a long backstory here, but to sum it up, two players went off on their own in a swamp.
Okay, great.
And apparently these two players have traditionally been more troublesome. So he can, I'm assuming Game Guy is a guy, so I'm going to use male pronouns here. So he planned it that a group of slavers have been hunting goblins in the swamp for my BBEG.
Big bad evil guy.
Thank you. Who is experimenting with goblins. I hadn't meant for the party to head this way for some time, and the leader of the slaver group could possibly kill the two of them alone. And I planned for him to have a spell storing ring with dominate person. Should I make it where they can easily take down the group, or do I have them suffer the consequences of running off on their own and capture them? I'd hate to take away their free agency, but I want them to not just dominate every session with no consequences.
Okay, so there's several big parts to this. So first of all, let's talk about in general splitting the party. I tell all of my groups that I don't like to split the party, and part of what I do when I tell them that is I make it very clear that the reason I don't like to split the party is it's less fun. Because it means that some people are going to go off and the campaign is going to the camera is going to follow them. And that means the other people are sitting around doing nothing. And they're also not supposed to know what's going on in this other situation. And so it's very easy to zone out. It's very easy to stop paying attention to what's going on with these other players because you can't be a part of it. You can't engage in any of it. And you're basically just sitting around and waiting for your turn to come up so that you can finally engage with the game, and then it has the opposite problem. Now the two players who maybe did have the camera focus now are sitting around not doing anything and not engaging in the game. This creates a whole lot of problems. In addition to the fact that it's not teamwork oriented, you're also not getting players to be involved in your game at the table. The thing that I remind people when they try to split the party is the party's going to split up and you're not going to be the focus. You want to go wander off into the swamp and have a side quest that is all about you. That's not going to happen. You're going to wander off into the swamp, and I'm going to say, great, let's talk about what these other players do, because you decided to split the party. And we're going to keep the focus on them, because they are the ones that wanted to stick together, and I'm going to reward them for that desire.
So that's your first consequence.
Right. Your first consequence is you don't get to play that much. You want to go split off. Great. What do? You explore the swamp. Awesome. We'll come back to your character after we've gone through everybody else's characters and what they're doing in that time, and we'll just have you roll a check. And great, you explored the swamp. Here's what you learned. You now meet back up with the party. Sometimes I'll be really explicit about that. And I will say, if you split the party, what we'll do is we'll have everybody roll checks. We'll resolve those checks. And then we will have you meet back up again. So you're not going to do anything while the party is split, or at least we're sort of going to fade to black, and then you meet back up again. And here's what you learned, or here's what you accomplished during that time. That way we skip ahead past the party split. Because sometimes it makes sense in the plot for the party to sort of split up.
And I could also see if, I'm old and I make dinner and have responsibilities. I could see like, oh my gosh, I have to go put the chicken in the oven. I'm going to go explore the swamp, guys. I'll meet you back later.
Oh, sure. Which is actually a great use of that kind of thing, where we can say, awesome, since Alyssa is stepping away from the table, we'll give her character something to do. She can come back and have done something useful and interesting, come back with extra information.
Or I come back with berries and sticks.
Sure. And now everybody gets a berry and stick party. But that sounds like a different...
It sounds terrible.
You said it.
I know you did.
And so then you get to engage in the group, even though you had to step away for adult responsibilities.
Right.
Your berry and stick responsibilities. So that's sort of my first big thing about splitting the party. But it seems like there's an extra level here, which is these are problematic players. When I have players at the table that are problematic, it may mean that they are looking for another way to engage with the game that I haven't given them an opportunity to do. So it may mean that these players are wanting to go off on their own because they haven't gotten a chance to really feel epic, or they're wanting to go off on their own because every time they suggest an idea, it gets shot down by the rest of the party. And so they said, I think we should explore the swamp. And the rest of the party said, no, that's a dumb idea. We shouldn't explore the swamp. We should wait here for something to happen. Mm-hmm. It may be the case that the problematic players are just searching for another way to engage in the game, which means that you as the game master, you might be able to help them with that and say, what is it you want to split the party? You want to go off on your own. What is it you're looking for? Or what is it you're hoping as an outcome from this? And really kind of touch base with the player at the table for what they're trying to accomplish. Because it may simply be the case that they're trying to split the party because they're like, well, because we're sitting around bored, we're hanging out by the campfire, and I want to get this plot moving forward. And you can go, oh, okay, you're just looking to move the plot forward. Is everybody okay with moving this plot forward a little bit? And you might be able to solve the party split there and the problematic players all at once, as you can get them to sort of agree that they all kind of want the same thing, even though that wasn't necessarily well stated at the beginning.
Right. Yeah, I don't understand why this swamp has to be the swamp that the big bad evil guy is in. If the game master doesn't want them to meet the big bad evil guy with a spell storing ring of dominate person, you don't have to. This could be a different swamp. They could still be in a swamp somewhere else.
You could also say it's a really big swamp. Let the players get lost and like run out of food and water.
Oh, yeah.
And like now they're wandering around the swamp trying to find their way because they need a map, or they need, in the plot you had said that they Game Guy _ had stated that they weren't supposed to head this way for some time.
Yeah, hadn't meant for the party to head this way for some time.
So the big question would be, why? Was it because you wanted the party to go prepare to fight this big bad evil guy? Maybe they needed some kind of protection against the big bad evil guy. Or maybe they need a map to explore the swamp in order to know where big bad evil guy is. Think about what was it that you wanted to be the barrier, the obstacle in the way of going into the swamp in the first place. Because if the whole party had just agreed, yeah, let's just go into the swamp, then what would you have done to stop them from doing that? Yeah. Did they need to level up a little more? Did they need more information about the big bad evil guy because they need to develop some better strategies for how to fight them? But either way, use that to help create your sort of natural consequences of going into the swamp too early. And you're totally right. It could be that they're in the wrong swamp, which would be kind of a hilarious result. You've come to the entire swamp. There's nobody here.
Suddenly an NPC comes out and goes, "Oh, you mean?"
Oh, you're at the Mistwater swamps. What you're looking for is the swamp of Mistwater.
Yeah. Oh, totally different.
That's another 20 miles north.
Oh, man.
And that could be just a hilarious way to sort of diffuse the situation. But I also like the idea, and I have done this before, of making some natural consequences of things. I would never kill a player because they made a single dumb choice.
Right.
Or, obviously, I wouldn't kill a player. I wouldn't kill a character because they made a single dumb choice.
Much better.
Yeah. I would make other consequences. Having them kidnapped. It could be an amazing opportunity to say, both of you are dominated. And now you come back out of the swamp and rejoin the rest of your party.
Ooh.
And I might even take them into another room and say, here's what's going to happen in the swamp. You come across the big bad evil guy. There's nothing you can do against them because you did not prepare yourselves. And both of you become dominated by the big bad evil guy. And you are now working for him.
Yeah, that's great.
And so now you aren't kidnapped because the big bad evil guy knows there's some other people that are hunting him down. And so he says, yeah, go back out there and bring your party to me.
Suddenly this is very Betrayal on the House of Haunted Hill.
Yeah.
Like, ooh.
And this could be like a fun way to play this where, you need to shake them out of it, or the party slowly discovers that their teammates have been dominated, like they're not behaving quite right. Or somebody casts detect magic as a result of something else, and then they see that there's magic on their teammates as well, and they're like, wait a second, why are you covered in magic?
Oh my gosh. I was just thinking of that. Just reminded me of the Futurama episode with the brain slugs.
Oh yeah. Thank you. It was cold down there on the floor. Yeah.
Just switch to a salt shampoo and we'll be fine.
Yeah. And I think that could provide you with a lot of opportunity. And probably what I would say is the players figure out a way to shake the other players figure out a way to shake the dominate person off of their teammates.
Right. Well, and it gets them to focus and concentrate more. Now they feel like there's the secret that they're in on, and they get to play that up.
Right.
That's a great suggestion.
But I love the turn where maybe the other players then shake them out of it. And now these two dominated players who've been sort of working against the party for some time can say, we know what the big bad evil guy's plan is. Mm-hmm. And we know how to stop them because part of the dominate, gave them some insight into that plan. Or
Harry Potter, Lord Voldemort.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I think this is you could use this as an opportunity, game guy, and give them consequences. And maybe tie it all together. But
don't kill them. And don't turn the game into being not fun for those two players. They're just looking for a way to have fun in the game. And it may be the case that their fun is encroaching on somebody else's fun, but most of the time, in my experience, that's not intentional. Nobody is trying to have fun and wants other people to have less fun so that they can have more fun. Most of the time, it's just that they're trying to have fun and they don't really know how to define that or how to ask for that. So give them an opportunity to define a little of what it is that they want from the game, what kind of game everybody wants to be playing, and use that as a way to say, great, let's work this more into the plot and figure out a way to allow everybody to be having a really good time in the game that we're playing.
Yeah. All right. Well, it is overdue. We are overdue for a break. So let's take a break.
Sounds good.
Hey, it's us again. Adam and I get asked all the time how we make our podcast, and the answer is simple. We use Anchor.
Anchor is a free creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer.
Then, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all the places that you listen to us.
You can also make money from your podcast too, with no minimum listenership required. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place.
Make sure to download the free Anchor app, or you can go to anchor.fm to get started.
And we're back.
We are. So let's...
I had a great break.
Did you?
Yeah.
What'd you do on your break?
I went for a bicycle ride, and then I came back and I invented a new kind of speedboat.
Wow.
Yeah.
I played Animal Crossing and did chores
Oh,
on my island.
sorry. Oh, on your island. Not real chores.
Not real chores.
Just Animal Crossing chores.
Yes, fake chores.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Ask a GM. Hey, GM.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah, abject _ sir is asking, what is your "that campaign would be cool, but there's no way I could make it work" idea?
Oh, man. I have the perfect one for this.
Now, keep this in mind. You are putting this out to the ether, so...
It's okay.
Okay.
There's a great comic that I have really enjoyed, which I totally recommend, called Goblins Comic. It's a sort of Dungeons and Dragons based comic where it follows the level, 1/4 goblins that you fight on your very first campaign as the main characters instead of the like human adventurers
The
or whatever.
heroes.
Yeah, the heroes. And it's great because the goblins develop these amazing characters. They have incredible personalities, and the heroes also have incredible personalities. The writer of the comics really done a spectacular job with it, and the artwork continues to evolve and it starts off a little rough,
MS Paint.
yeah, but really the creator of the comic gets better and better throughout as you're reading it. So I highly recommend it. Not a sponsor, but totally a comic that I really enjoy. In the comic, the creator does a dungeon that is a sort of multi-dimension dungeon where every time you go through the dungeon, it resets when you die and you wind up back at the beginning. And the idea is that it's all of you from every possible dimension that are all put into the dungeon at once, and you're competing for who gets to win. And whoever wins, their dimension exists, and everybody else's dimensions cease to exist.
Whoa.
So the stakes are high. And there's a counter at the beginning of the dungeon that tells you how many times you've died. But you don't remember. So it's just a number that exists there that shows you how many times you have failed to complete the dungeon. And because the dungeon still exists, it means that nobody has completed the dungeon. So it's basically like a brutally hard dungeon where all the traps kill you instantly, and you basically have to figure out your way through. I've always wanted to do a dungeon, not necessarily with the memory wipe part of it, but a dungeon where you just have to keep iterating, where the traps are brutal and ridiculous, and you basically just have to keep going through the dungeon and trying again and again to make it through. And every time you die, you just wind up back at the beginning of the dungeon.
It's a dungeon version of the Impossible game.
Yeah, essentially. And I like that idea, but it's so hard to execute well that I've never really tried to do it, because usually that kind of repetition is not interesting. So the easiest way to solve that problem is that you have the players, every time they solve a challenge, you just assume that they have solved that challenge the next time around. But that makes it also not super, super interesting to go through. And it means that as somebody dies, you just go, great, now you got to start all over this challenge again. So I think there might be a good way to do it, but I've never quite nailed down exactly how to make that happen and still make it be as fun as I want it to be.
Yeah. My thought was Inception.
Mm-hmm.
How would you do like a dream within a dream within a dream within a dream that still affects where you are? Like time is moving slower out here, but because suddenly they're in a rotating van, everything is going haywire in the next dream level. And
oh, sure.
I would love to turn that into some sort of plot where you find out that you're actually in a dream within a dream, and then you wake up and there's some bits and elements from that previous session that are now in this session, but it's different and skewed slightly. But man alive, I could not think about how I would do that. It's just daunting, the amount of thought that would have to go into it. And it would just be a completely railroaded thing.
Oh, sure.
Like, I can't imagine players having free will, because that would wreck my whole plot, right? So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tough to do it, especially the as you start to get down into deeper levels. You might be able to do it if you had a really specific goal. The thing that made Inception work so well was because they had such a very, very specific goal they were trying to aim for.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. It would be tough. You'd really have to plan out a lot of big pieces of it, and especially the timeline stuff, because time works so strangely in D&D anyway. Your timeline of events would be so much more difficult to properly accomplish in the sort of dream within a dream state.
Yeah. I'm sure that there are people who have done something like that, but I've never really bothered to look.
In a Game to Grow group, we actually did a dream campaign where you had to retrieve a bit of information by going into somebody else's dream. And it worked out pretty well. It was pretty fun. We just sort of hopped between, all the dreams were different memories.
Right. But that's not going into another dream.
No, that is a whole,
dream.
Yeah.
And like having to wake up the person whose dream it is, but like you might not know whose actual, like in my head, you would start at the lowest, at the deepest dream level, and suddenly you realize you have to wake someone up, and you don't know who in the party do you have to wake up, and when you wake them up, you're like, okay, we're back.
Maybe a cool way to do it would be you do it as a one-shot, and you have all the players starting off in this campaign world, and there's some really strange stuff going on, and then you make them realize that they're in a dream, but they don't remember being in a dream, and so then they wake up, and now you remember that you went into a dream, and now you're in this new, different world, and now you start to realize you're also still within a dream.
Yeah, you must.
And so you're sort of slowly making your way back, but you never remember the previous state that you were in.
Right.
That might be kind of an interesting way to do it. But then you could also you could make each dream world different. So you could do like, this is a futuristic world where you're fighting on planets and there's alien monsters and stuff like that. And it's just part of your dream. So you wake up and then you're now in a fantasy world. And you're like, wait a second, this isn't right either. And then that's part of your dream. And you wake up and now you're in like a modern RPG or a completely different kind of setting. I think you could
the Old West.
The Old West. Now you're in an Old West thing, and you're trying to wake up from that dream. If it is a dream, you're trying to basically narrow
not sure.
down.
Right.
Now you're
like,
never sure, is this the dream
ever.
or is this the real one?
Right. Yeah. It'd be cool, but it'd be way too
It
hard.
would be super tough to do. I totally
Ain't nobody
agree.
got time for that.
I'll also say I have attempted on several occasions, and sometimes with some great success, to do time travel campaigns. Those are really tough. They're so hard to do well. They're so hard to really execute in a way that is satisfying. But I have had some success in doing some level of time travel or future predictions, like prophecy and stuff like that. And they're tough, but they are possible.
Well, let us move on to the last segment of the show, which is Use That Spell.
Ba-da-ba-ba-bow. Use that spell.
Where I name a spell and we talk about it. So this spell is called Stoneskin.
Oh, I like this spell.
Stoneskin, Abjuration, level 4, casting time 1 action. It's a touch range. You have to touch someone to do it.
Yep.
Components, verbal, S and M.
Somatic.
Materials. Somatic.
And material.
What is somatic again?
Somatic is moving your hands or your body.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So verbal, whoop-de-doo, and then
Whoop-de-doo.
materials. The materials are diamond dust, worth 100 gold points, which is interesting.
Gold pieces.
I know. Conjuration, up to an hour. Concentration, not conjuration. Wow, good morning. The spell turns the flesh of a willing creature you touch as hard as stone. Until the spell ends, the target has resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. This is from the Player's Handbook from page 278.
So this is a fun spell. I actually really like to use this spell as a druid because you can cast the spell and then shapeshift. And then the spell effects continue while you're in your shapeshifted form. So it's a nice way to extend out the hit points of your druid character.
I would think that if your skin was turned to stone, you wouldn't then be able to shapeshift as a rhino.
I did not write those rules, but I do agree with them. It's a magical effect that is persisting on you. The fact that you have turned yourself into a rhino doesn't undo the magical effect that is persisting on you. If that was the case, then it would also mean that you could undo other magical effects that are on you by shapeshifting into other creatures. So, for instance, if someone casts Hold Person, all of a sudden you could shapeshift into a rhino and you're no longer held because you're not a person.
That makes sense to me. I'm holding this gnome and suddenly they turn into a freaking rhino. Okay. I can't hold on to that.
But it breaks some other parts of the game if you can shapeshift in order to remove the magic from yourself.
Okay. I believe you, but I don't like it.
But I do like this spell. I do like Stoneskin. It's got a really great feel to it. One of the problems I always had with this spell is it's a level 4 spell, which is getting up there in levels. And it only has resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, which makes it very situational.
Right.
Because if you're fighting against, bad guys and monsters that are powerful enough to really, really hurt you at level 8 or 9 when you're really using this spell, when you're finally getting access to it, then a lot of them are going to have magical damage or are going to do other kinds of damage like elemental damage and things like that your bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing is not helping you with. So it's useful against, say, you're fighting a bunch of bandits and they're attacking you. In that case, it's pretty useful. But it is somewhat situational by the time you get up high enough level to really do something with it.
Could you have like a vial of Stoneskin or something you could like pour on yourself?
Absolutely. I think there's even a potion of Stoneskin.
Hey, there you go.
Normally you drink it. I like pour on yourself.
Well, yeah, because you have to pour.
It's like suntan lotion.
Yeah, you got to pour it where you want it.
You rub it in.
Skin will harden.
Yeah.
Like go out in the sun and it'll harden in the sun.
Yeah. I also
good for the pores.
It occurs to me that this doesn't tell. It just says your skin turns hard as stone.
As hard as stone.
But it doesn't look like stone. I always liked the idea that it would actually make you look kind of like stone, like Colossus from the X-Men comics.
Oh,
you can turn into metal. I always liked the idea that you sort of look like you're stone, which could also maybe let you hide as a statue, which would be kind of cool.
I guess so, but if you were going to say, like, I just want to turn my arm as hard as stone, and I want to leave the rest of me be. I don't know why you would need that, but...
I just want to have stone arm.
I could see that if you didn't want to let the enemies know that they could hit me here and it would hurt, but if they hit me here, it won't hurt.
I guess that's true.
But again, that's situational.
I would probably allow that if a player wanted to just look the same but be hardest, you have their skin as hard as stone, then that would be fine with me.
Yeah, it's a surprise.
I would also allow that if they said, I want to look like marble instead of or sandstone, or I want to look like obsidian. Like I'd be like, yeah, all right, cool, whatever. That sounds good. I am almost always totally okay with the spell effect looking however you want it to look.
Suddenly I am covered in rubies.
Yeah, or diamond, which is another X-Men character.
Really?
Yeah, you can turn themselves into diamond.
Well, why would they name themselves that? That's just that's a given.
They didn't name themselves Diamond.
What's their name?
Oh, I don't remember.
I thought you said their name was Diamond.
I said they can turn themselves into Diamond.
Oh, I thought you said there's an X-Men character, Diamond, who can turn himself into Diamond.
Oh, no. Although, that does sound like Silver Age of X-Men
right.
characters. My name is Metal Skin. I turn myself into my skin
just
into
my
metal.
Skin.
Yeah.
I'm Breed's Underwater Girl.
I mean, come on. Like, Angel's character was called Angel with wings.
Yeah.
With angel wings.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. It's Beast. Come on. Like, the early X-Men superhero names were pretty straightforward.
Okay, let's talk about So if Stoneskin actually makes your skin look like it's stone, and we have it in potion form, could I make a stencil and give myself stone tattoos?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it only lasts a certain amount of time, so they'd be like henna tattoos or whatever,
Yeah, I suppose so.
where they aren't permanent. They just look like stone.
But
They
how
just look like
cool?
stone
How
on
cool
your-
would the big barbarian look walking into town with these like stone tattoos?
It does. It is a cool
stone
idea.
tattoo sleeve all over his arms. And,
Yeah,
you know,
I do like that
intimidation.
you know, there's dragon marks, which are a thing in the game where you can get tattoos, and there's specific like magical tattoos that have magical effects.
Well, that's awesome.
I like the idea that you could have like magical tattoos that are stone, and because they are stone and they're permanent, because they are stone, they raise your armor class by 1 or something like that, and that would be, you know, in line with some of the other magical effects. But they basically like allow you to like parry swords off the edges
my
of your
gosh.
arms because you've got like bits of stone. And
That'd be
stuff
the most badass monk ever.
Oh yeah, that'd be really cool.
Except, couldn't you? Isn't there a shape stone?
Yeah, there is.
So if your arms have stone on them, could someone shape
Oh
them?
man, that gets into like
And
a
then-
really brutal place.
Suddenly it's like a voodoo doll or like a puppet.
Not to bring it back around to X-Men, but Magneto ripped all of the metal off of Wolverine's bones at one point in the
See,
comics.
you went there, and I went to the movie Stardust with the voodoo doll puppet fight at the end with the dead guy.
Oh, that's much more comedic.
Yeah. Still brutal, but
Still pretty brutal, but
comedic.
definitely comedic. I think that if somebody wanted to be creative with this spell, I would be 100% on board with that. Even though, and I realize I'm thinking back to some of our other podcast episodes, and I said, if you want to try to use the spell, but there's another spell that has the same effect, I would say you can't do that.
Yeah, you totally said that.
But in this case, this would be more about the fun of what you're trying to accomplish. And if you're blowing a higher level spell to accomplish the effect of what a lower level spell could normally do, in that case, usually I'm okay with it.
Okay.
So if you wanted to use Stoneskin to achieve an effect that you normally need a level 8 spell in order to achieve, I probably wouldn't let you do it. But if you wanted to use Stoneskin, a level 4 spell, to achieve an effect that you could do with a level 1 spell, where you minor illusion yourself to look like you have stone on your skin, then I would totally be okay with that, because you could just as easily use that level 1 spell, and now you're using this in a creative way. So using it to like look like you have skin made of different kinds of stones just sounds like fun to me.
Right.
Also, I wish it was just a little more versatile. I wish it at least worked for magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. I think it would be so much more interesting as a spell. Maybe it becomes too broken at that point. I'll ask Jeremy Crawford at some point.
I'll just casually ask
I'll just
Jeremy
casually
Crawford.
walk up and ask Jeremy Crawford what he thinks. But I do like the spell.
Well, I thought it was fun. We've used it in. Didn't we use it with what was it? We had a character where the bad guy did stone skin on themselves, and someone else shaped stone, and like we had a character like dive into their stomach.
It wasn't stone skin, but yes, there was a bad guy that had all these elemental powers, so he turned his whole self into like a stone elemental,
Right.
like a earth elemental, and then somebody else had the meld with stone
Right.
ability and dove inside of him when he turned himself into earth, and then used that to, maybe you did that. Did
I
you
think
use
it was
that?
Walkett.
Yeah. And used it to like help control him, like hold down his arms and stuff while you were inside of it.
Right.
Which was a super creative way to attack our elementally charged opponent. And so I was 100% okay with
Yeah.
figuring out a way to make
It was
that work.
really epic.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That campaign ended in a really fun way.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for listening. I think this ends our episode.
I guess that's it. Thanks for listening to our episode of the next session. You should totally come and find out more about the next session. Pass it on to other people. Tweet about it.
Feel free to do that whole 5-star thing.
Share it with other people. Give it 5 stars.
That's great.
If that's the maximum number of stars. If it's out of 10, don't give it 5 stars. Give it 10 stars instead. But we'd love to thank all of you for listening. We'd love to thank everybody who helps submit questions, which we always appreciate, or any feedback that you have. You can go to our website at nextsessionpodcast.com, and you can submit a question there, and also find all of our episodes on the website that you can listen to. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Session. So I guess I'm Adam Johns.
And I'm Alyssa Johns.
And tune in next time as we help you prepare for your next session.
All right. Thank you.